Welcome to the New York Now podcast, a modern wholesale market for retailers and specialty buyers seeking diversity and discovery. Gathering twice a year in America's design capital, New York City, it's where buyers and designers unearth a refreshed and dedicated collection of eclectic lifestyle products.
Welcome to the New York Now podcast. Today's podcast is how to navigate the landscape of hemp and CBD merchant payment processing, and so much more, with CBD Payment Pro's managing partner, Mark Garfinkel, and Bob Berger, head of marketing. Gentlemen, welcome to today's podcast. Mark, if I could invite you to share a little background on what CBD Payment Pros does and what your role is.
Sandra, certainly. Thanks for having us both on, and we're really looking forward to it today. CBD Payment Pros was founded with the sole purpose of really consulting and helping merchants in the hemp and CBD marketplace be able to find the best payment solutions out there in the market. The world of hemp and cannabinoid payments has been a bit of a minefield over the last couple of years, and really it's only been over the last 6 to 9 months that things have started to get a little bit more stable ever since the introduction of the Farm Bill back in late 2018. But it's still taken a while, and there's still a lot of work to do. CBD Payment Pros it was founded by International Payments Processing. So International Payments has a ton of experience in the e-commerce and high-risk payment processing landscape. But with CBD Payment Pros, we've made a full commitment to assist merchants in that space, working both with e-commerce merchants as well as retail point-of-sale merchants in their store. And we really take a consultative, concierge-style approach in working with our merchants to educate them and build partnerships and long-term relationships with them.
Excellent. So we hear a lot about hemp and CBD products these days. Can you give our viewers, our listeners rather, just a rundown on the different types of hemp and CBD products?
I mean, most merchants that are out there today, I think that when you talk about tinctures and oils, that's really kind of the most popular product. And then the health and beauty products follow right behind with skin creams, balms. And they're in your area with a lot of higher end retail merchants. That's also a very popular area with skincare products. But the list really goes on. It includes edibles and drinkable products, which we'll have some commentary on later because that's really kind of a more dicey area versus some of the others. Then you have hemp flower, hemp pre-rolls, and hemp cigarettes. You have CBD vape products. And as well as other cannabinoids that are becoming more and more popular, whether it's CBG or CBN as well.
Wow, that is quite a wide range to consider. And with that, what is the position of the FDA on the marketing and distribution of these products to the public? Like what kind of legal and regulatory issues should merchants be considering?
Well, that's a great question, because even with the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill, there's still quite a few issues that remain. And I would say that what it did is it legalized hemp. It descheduled CBD and hemp products, taking it off of Schedule 1. And so that loosened things up a bit. However, the FDA still has tremendous oversight over this area. And they're concerned, based upon the lack of evidence and scientific studies and testing, with the way that these products are marketed in terms of miracle cures for cancer, inflammation, or many other ailments, rheumatoid arthritis, many other ailments that merchants want so very badly to talk about when they're selling their CBD products. And that really is the biggest issue, the oversight of the FDA and how that impacts CBD and hemp merchants, and making sure that the products that are out there are below the legal limit in terms of the amount or level of THC as well.
Right.
Bob, do you have anything to add on that part?
Well, no, it's just that, the FDA position and stance is to protect the consumers. And I think that's really, when you hear about regulation and legalities, when the FDA gets involved, it really is to make sure, because there's so many products out there, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a little later on. But
Right.
uh, quite honestly, some are better than others. It would be anybody would be hard pressed to say that every product out there has gone through the process and of maybe being compliant and being safe to the public.
Yeah,
Again, when you
there's
talk
a lot
about
of
legal and
yeah,
I'm
there's a
sorry,
lot of
Mark.
work to be done in that regard,
Right.
to kind of bring a standardized process and more testing that will enable the FDA to loosen up a little bit. But in the meantime, and we'll talk more about this, it's created a lot of the obstacles that exist in the marketplace today with respect to getting a merchant account.
Right. So, are there any particular hemp products that you feel are more heavily scrutinized by the FDA?
Absolutely. I mean, I think a couple of areas. One would be the edibles and drinkable products. And if we step back a second, back in 2018, there was a drug approved called Epidiolex for the treatment of epilepsy. And this is a CBD product. So going through that process of the FDA and being approved as a drug, CBD cannot legally be introduced as a dietary supplement in any edible form. And that's both for human and animal consumption. So the current stance of the FDA is actually, the current language has created actually somewhat of a enigma, if you will, for merchants and the banks that want to support it, because the FDA is basically right out there calling edibles products illegal, where CBD edibles products illegal. And many merchants are selling it.
Right.
And there are many banks that are going ahead and accepting it as long as the other factors are in place, such as that they have the proper COAs and the THC levels are below the legal limit.
Oh, well, so you mentioned that there are merchants out there who are making various claims in terms of health benefits and stuff. Tell us a little bit about the kind of implications that these merchants need to be aware of, really in terms of making sure that they are compliant with those FDA guidelines, which are clearly there to protect the consumer.
Right. I mean, it really is quite the tightrope that merchants have to walk, right? Because the merchants, so many of them, this is such a fantastic industry, and so many people, and there have been some studies done that demonstrate the efficacy of helping people's lives with these types of products. So merchants just want to scream from the rooftops, from the bottom of their heart. They're not trying to fool anybody about how it has maybe helped their life or has helped somebody important to them.
Right.
But the implications are in doing that is that you come under the scrutiny of the FDA and the Visa and MasterCard card brands and the banks that have to police these requirements.
Right.
Those are the real implications. But the bottom line is merchants cannot really make outstanding claims about their products that they've helped relieve the pain associated with cancer or reduce the inflammation associated with arthritis or get rid of their headaches, or they have to be very generic comments about CBD and less specifically about their own products. And there are certain do's and don'ts about what merchants can and cannot say in talking about their products. And for merchants, I understand it's very difficult, right?
Right.
The merchant believes in their product. The merchant spends money, in many cases, spends money developing their product to do certain things and help with sleep, to help with energy, or to help with other states or of your being. but they have to be very careful as to how they market that.
Right.
You have to avoid terms or words that can raise the attention, such as relieve, aid, enhance, etc., with respect to the claims that they make about the products. What we saw last year was an unprecedented cascade of warning letters issued by the FDA. They issued 15 warning letters all at one time against merchants of varying size and scope. Some of the biggest out there, such as a Curaleaf, and some that are very, very small. And this is by no means that any of these are doing bad things, but by the letter of the law of the FDA, they're going against what they say.
Right. Well, I'm sure that's not a pleasant experience for any merchant to receive a series of warning letters from the FDA. No one wants that. But of course, we also recognize that the remit of the FDA is to protect the customer, to protect the end user.
And this is all materials, all marketing materials. But I think, what's really visible, and there's a lot of emphasis and discussion on the websites, because a website can have so many different areas of talking about the company, about the product. Websites, are pretty much high on the list in terms of, the scrutiny. Now, it's just not websites, but websites are very visible. And it's not just limited to what the merchant may publish about their products, but let's say that one of their customers leaves just a glowing recommendation about the product and what it did for them. It's a merchant's responsibility actually to review those entries before they're posted so that they can actually remove anything, even if it's a customer making a health claim, not allowed. So
Excellent
merchants will reach out to customers and say, hey, this is kind of where we are. Do you mind if we kind of change the verbiage a little bit? So,
Right.
But really, the websites come under a lot of scrutiny.
I'm sure. But that's an excellent point, too, about making sure that the merchants also monitor those customer reviews so that they don't cross the line in terms of what those claim limitations are.
Yeah, because banks, they're not just going to initially review the website for that initial boarding and approval process.
Mm-hmm.
There's an ongoing review. They will review websites periodically just to make sure that everything's okay.
Yeah.
And actually, to take your point just a modicum further, Bob, there's software that banks use that they deploy to automatically scans the websites and will identify when a change has been made to that website, and it will bring what that change is to the forefront
to their attention, right?
of the risk department of the bank.
Mm.
So it's something that's very closely watched, and this is one of the hurdles, unfortunately, that merchants have to navigate right now.
Right. So again, we understand that the whole remit of the FDA is to protect the customer and to ensure that the product that they're buying is within that legal level of THC and meets the federal standards. What kind of processes are in place to ensure that protection?
Well, one of the things that all manufacturers are required to do is to have laboratory analysis of the products that they manufacture. Or let's say, for instance, if it's hemp flower, the testing has to be done on that. So this is done through a certificate of analysis, and the certificate of analysis, well, it helps protect the consumer to ensure that what is in the product, that the product meets the federal guidelines and regulations and standards, not only with respect to the level of THC, but other critical elements as well, such as heavy metals testing and toxicity testing as well. So the COA, or the certificate of analysis, is a big part of that to assist not only to help the consumer, but it also helps the banks and the regulators to stay on top of these issues.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the issues with respect to COAs are the authenticity of a COA. because there haven't been any standards yet established, I think it's an ongoing process that's being considered. I mean, the most authentic COA is a situation where a merchant might have a label that with the QR code, whereby this QR code literally brings up a COA that is directly from the lab. A consumer can scan that QR code and see the most up-to-date and current COA for that product that the merchant has on their website, or they may be looking at in a store, right?
Right.
But in lieu of that, we in the banks have to look out for our merchants, right? And make sure that COAs are authentic, that they're not photoshopped, and that a merchant may not be misrepresenting a product, either in terms of the age of the COA or the level of the THC or anything else.
Right. Which is good. I mean, it's good for the end user. It's good for the consumer. And it's obviously a very important part of the whole process to make sure that merchants are accountable and that end users and consumers are fully protected.
Absolutely.
It certainly sounds like there could be a lot of obstacles that a merchant can expect to have to navigate, during this whole application process for approval of a CBD merchant account. Can you tell us a little more as it relates to that whole process?
Absolutely. Historically, it's been a tough process. The biggest issue confronting merchants has been how few or little banks would accept it. Then it would be banks that decide they're going to try to accept it, like an Elevon. They try to get into the business, but they don't know how to underwrite these merchants.
Right.
And they don't have the proper infrastructure in place in order to be able to effectively manage a deep dive into these merchants. And then it went to not having any banks, to maybe having banks that just come and then they go, to having banks that take 4 or 5 weeks or 6 weeks in the underwriting process. So these are all things that merchants have had to deal with. But now things are getting a little bit better. We can see underwriting times that take a matter of days instead of a matter of weeks, right?
Right.
3, 4, 5, maybe up to 10 days, depending on how much back and forth there has to be between once a proper merchant application, and the package is submitted. But some of the other issues and hurdles that they confront, I mean, Bob hit the nail on the head earlier with respect to the website. It's the number one, right? You can't submit a merchant account without a completed website. And the completed website has to meet all of the specifications laid out by Visa and MasterCard for e-commerce merchant accounts.
Right.
Selling online, such as having the card brand logos on a website, something as simple as that, or your terms and conditions, your shipping policy, your refund policy. We help merchants guide them through that process of making sure that their website is good to go when we submit it to the bank, so that there's no back and forth once the package is submitted to the bank. But in addition to that, as we mentioned, we'll go through and try to do a soft scrub, if you will, of the health and marketing claims that we referred to earlier, and let them know what we feel may or may not be acceptable to the bank. We review their products to make sure that they're allowed with the bank. This is where consulting comes in, and the white glove treatment that we give merchants, because not all banks accept all products.
Right.
Each have their own nuances of how they work with merchants, what documentation requirements they have, what products they will allow, and other specifications. And also, it's important as to whether a merchant is an experienced merchant with processing history, or maybe they're just a startup merchant without. And then, what kind of volume, what kind of goals does the merchant have, and what kind of capital do they have behind their business?
Mm-hmm.
All of these impact the underwriting process, and we want to help the merchant build a package that will get them to the finish line as quickly as possible. We want to help them do it in an expedient fashion once it's submitted and get them approved as quickly as possible.
Excellent. So you talk about all these different obstacles and all these different paths that merchants have to navigate. What kind of expert services and support can CBD Payment Pros extend to hemp and CBD merchants, whether they're starting out or whether they're existing merchants looking to add hemp and CBD products to their product lines? What kind of advice and expert services can you guys offer?
Well, Bob, I think you do a really nice job with this type of question. So do you want to tackle this one?
Yeah, I think, Sandra, it comes down to this. As Mark mentioned in the intro, we've been in the high risk business, the e-commerce business for a long time. And we've established relationships with a lot of these banks out, whether they're domestic banks here, whether they're international banks. But for us, it's a matter of lending our expertise and letting merchants, now CBD merchants, benefit from our expertise, our experience, our relationships with all these different institutions. Mark mentioned that not all banks accept all products, and the different banks have different conditions, and we know, and it's an art really, and it's based on just going through it for so many different years. We know how to map the customer's needs depending on what they're selling and depending on what is their history to the proper banking solutions. A lot of your clients, in the upper end shops who may already be established in the retail space, on the high end,
Right.
And maybe they're getting into CBD. So it's because they've existed, because they have processing history, they have a better leg up and certainly can navigate and just kind of segue right into this new and exciting business. But we help the smaller merchants, the startups,
Right.
who may not have that history, who may not have that experience. So, again, Mark mentioned, we take a consultative approach. And for us, I know a lot of customers hear this, or a lot of businesses hear this from different service providers, but we really do care about these merchants, these businesses. We're not in it just to make a sale.
Right.
We're in it for the long haul. And I can't tell you how many conversations we've had with different companies where just the exchange of information, because they help us and we help them, is helpful to both parties. And it doesn't lead to a sale necessarily. We may not sign them up for processing services, but, we've established a relationship.
Our experience in the business is vast, and that's where we really lend help and aid to the merchants and helping them understand that, look, the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill was not, it just didn't result in peaches and cream with respect to merchant processing. The banks are still very jittery and skittish about entering the industry, and you count on two hands, and it really doesn't take that many fingers on the two hands, the number of banks that are willing to participate in the industry of CBD processing, because it is an intensive underwriting process that they have to go through to make sure that they are in compliance. Right. And it's one of the reasons why pricing for CBD merchants is higher. There's a very, very good reason for that. The banks are taking on more risk. Their underwriting teams, they have to perform more in-depth and extensive due diligence in their underwriting process. And this doesn't include just evaluating the website and monitoring the website, but it's also examining and evaluating the COA. So you can see through all of this that there's just a lot more that goes into that process, not just on underwriting it, but on an ongoing monitoring of it, than just a regular old merchant account for widgets.
Right, right.
Very true.
One point I want to bring up there, and that is those merchants that are already in business and already have established their merchant payment processing accounts, but now are looking to expand their product offerings into hemp and CBD products. I would imagine because of the regulations that process for those new CBD products would be quite different and certainly much more involved. What happens when a company finds that their existing payment processing account does not cover the new CBD and hemp products that they're looking to add?
Right, that's an important consideration. And because when merchants launch a CBD product line, let me give you a quick example. If it's just a single product and you've got 50 products, you may not want to risk your merchant processing on your existing product line to try to process, because in all likelihood, your current merchant account is not accepting CBD products. However, the other consideration is, do you want to get a merchant account specifically for CBD where you're having to pay 1, maybe 2% higher than your existing merchant account just for a single product? So what merchants may consider, particularly if they're going to roll out more than a single product, is just creating a separate line of products underneath the separate but related business entity, under a different web URL, and market their CBD products separately from their mainstream products that they're currently marketing.
So in essence, creating a new brand with which to house the hemp and CBD product separate to their existing line and run those two separately.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And each merchant might have a different scenario as to how they need to proceed. So, but those are the considerations that have to be factored in making.
And it sounds like that's where they would really benefit from the expertise and insight and advice from a company like CBD Payment Pros, who've clearly encountered all different types of scenarios and helped those merchants navigate through and find the best path for them to be successful.
Yeah, we would like to think so. We're not the only one out there that is a value-added reseller of payment solutions to the hemp CBD marketplace, but we'd like to think that we're one of the best.
Excellent. Well, it certainly has been a great treat speaking with both of you today, and I have no doubt that our listeners will benefit greatly from this information and your insights. Can we share the website URL for our listeners to perhaps reach out and learn a little bit more about CBD Payment Pros?
Just www.cbdpaymentpros.com.
Perfect. Wonderful. Gentlemen, thank you again. It's been a great pleasure speaking with both of you.
Thank you, Sandra.
And enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks so much, Sandra.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the New York Now podcast. Make sure to tune in weekly for engaging and insightful conversations touching on the most relevant topics facing our community today. Visit newyorknow.com to learn more about our market and how you can join in on the conversation.